My new coat is warm, stylish, and full of awful mysteries. By N.S. Lewis. Nothing dies. You are stardust and god and rat viscera. The big one. You're ridiculous, said Kim, as I tore off a strip of duct tape with my teeth. What? I said, sticking one end of the tape onto one flap of my jacket and patting it down tight. You're going to drive yourself to the store today, right now, and buy yourself a new coat, said Kim. I drew the jacket closed and patted down the other end of the tape onto the other flap. Why? I said. This one's fine. Even I had a hard time swallowing that, though. 2 years ago, the zipper on this coat jammed up and broke irreparably. The Velcro clasp had worked for a surprisingly long time, but had too eventually failed. And now, I was down to using duct tape to keep the thing closed. Kim just glared at me. Alright, I said. I guess it is time to get a new one. I've got a full day, though. Really, that was a bit of a stretch. I didn't really have any Sunday plans at all. I was just about to go for a little walk. The truth was, I hated to do shopping of any kind. Can't you just pick one up for me? I'll leave you my card to pay for it. Excuse me, said Kim. I must have misheard you, because I thought I heard my husband, a grown-ass, 36-year-old man, ask me to do his clothes shopping for him, as if I was his mother, and he was still a whittle bedwetting schoolboy. She was done playing around then. I am a dumb man, but there are limits to my dumbness. What I said was, absolutely yes, I am on my way right now to go get a new coat. That's what I thought you said. She was sounding a little less dangerous now. And pick me up some maxi pads while you're out, she added. I am not a fashionable man, by any stretch, but even I could tell that the black coat I stumbled across in my local thrift store was downright stylish, and only $20. I tried it on and it fit perfectly, like it was made for me. I paid and wore it out of the store, and was amazed by how warm it kept me against the winter wind. When I got home, Kim was legitimately impressed. She wasn't even mad that I had forgotten the maxi pads. What brand is that? She said. It looks expensive. I leaned forward, grinning like an idiot so she could check the tags. Only $20, I said proudly. Huh, she said. No tags. The store must have cut them out. I'm gonna look online and see if I can figure it out. As she did that, I got a beer and plopped down in my chair. I still had my coat on. It was just so damn comfortable. My little girl, Anna, woke up from her nap and she saw me sitting there in my puffy new black coat. She ran down the hallway and jumped right on me. It's soft, she cooed, nuzzling her face into the coat. The coat, I decided, was a definite all-around hit. That night, Kim kicked me awake. You didn't turn off your ringer, she accused. And who the hell is calling you at 3 a.m.? Through the haze of half sleep, I heard the phone ringing from the living room. It wasn't my usual ringtone, but sometimes the thing went haywire and converted back to factory settings. Or something. I didn't know. I couldn't keep up with that shit anymore. Sorry, honey. It'll stop in a minute. I closed my eyes and started to drift back to sleep. Kim kicked me again. It's not stopping. It's gonna wake Anna up and then I'll never get back to sleep. It was another one of those do or die moments for me. If I didn't get my ass out of bed right then and there to stop the ringing, my ass was grass. I made an impossible effort to get out of bed. I felt mostly sorry for myself at first, but with each half-stumbled step down the hallway, as the phone rang on, my rage was building. Whoever was on the other end of the line was about to get the lesson of a lifetime on civility and basic human decency. I made it to the living room and reached out to the dark windowsill where I charged my phone at night. I grabbed it roughly, yanking the charger out of its port and stared at the screen. It was blank. I powered it on and stared in bewilderment to see that nobody was calling me, and yet the phone rang on and on. For a moment, I got an ugly thrill thinking that it was actually Kim's phone ringing. When it came to things like this, I was almost always in the wrong, and Kim would almost always let me know. I guessed it would be nice to have the tables turned on her for once, but no, I thought, That's not right. Kim kept her phone on her nightstand and religiously set it to do not disturb before going to sleep. The ringing was definitely coming from the living room. I followed the sound into the dark outline of my chair. That's when it hit me. The ringing was coming from inside my coat. I had finally gotten too warm wearing it in the house in the afternoon, and I had slung it over the back of my chair, where it rested still. I reached into the front pockets, but nothing was there. Then I felt around the inside. I found it. A small pocket that I hadn't noticed before. I had reached in, and just as my hand closed around something, the ringing stopped. I stood there in sudden silence, in my undies, with my hand inside of the coat, and I got the heebie-jeebies. That feeling that there's something there, something out in the darkness. I yanked the object out of my coat and held it up to my face. Sure enough, it was a phone. A prehistoric Motorola flip phone. I flipped it open, and the screen, backlit by that sickly green light, showed a missed call. I squinted. The call was from the small one. I shook my head. I turned off the ringer and threw it onto the coffee table. I crept down the hallway back to my bedroom, where I was relieved to see that Anna had not woken up or squirmed her way into our bed. I had done the quick mental calculations. Even though it wasn't my phone, the whole thing was my fault for not checking the code over thoroughly enough. "Who the fuck was that?" said Kim, sitting upright alert against the headboard. "The small one," I said, lowering myself onto that beautiful bed. "Who the fuck is the small one?" she asked. "Dunno, honey," I said, closing my eyes. In the morning, I sat in my chair and tried to call the small one back, to no avail. "It just keeps ringing," I said. No voicemail or anything. "Well," Kim said from the kitchen, flipping a pancake, "try the contacts. The phone obviously still has service. I'm sure somebody's missing it." "It's a ghost phone," said Anna, in her 5-year-old voice, looking up from her video. That freaked me out a little when she said that. "There's no such thing as ghosts, kiddo," I said. "What kinds of videos are you watching over there, anyway?" "Avery saw one in his room," Anna said. Avery was a kid from kindergarten. "Avery saw a pile of clothes in the corner of his room, or something like that," I said, trying to navigate the ancient Motorola. At last, I figured out how to open up the contact screen. "Her skin was falling off," said Anna. "Are you hearing this stuff, honey?" I called into the kitchen. "Some people believe in ghosts," Kim replied. I shook my head and scrolled through the contacts on the phone. It didn't take long. There was only 4 of them. The big one, the bad one, the good one, the small one. Well, that gave me the proper heebie-jeebies. I mean, everyone uses little nicknames in their contacts, but there was something about the combination of those names, and the fact that those were the only names. No mom or Bill from work or anything else. It just got to me. I flipped the phone shut and tossed it across the coffee table. "Well?" Kim asked, coming into the room with a plate of pancakes. "Any luck?" "Nah," I said, taking a plate. "Thank you." "You tried the whole contact list?" she said doubtfully. I speared a chunk of pancake on my fork and sloshed it around in the syrup. "Look, I don't think I want to get involved in this, honey. It's just it's junky old phone from like the 90s. It's not really worth it." "It's a ghost phone," Anna said again. Jesus, I wish you would stop saying that shit. "Did you even try to call anybody?" Kim asked. "I tried the small one," I said defensively. "Well, try a couple more. And if nobody picks up, just leave a message and take the phone with you. If you don't hear anything by the end of the day, we'll forget it." I finished breakfast and then begrudgingly picked up the phone again. I knew who I was going to call first. I brought up the good one, punched the little green phone button, and listened as it rang and rang and rang. Finally, I hung up, frowning. The big one was next. Same result. I flipped the phone shut and then tapped it nervously on my knee. I looked over at Kim, who was looking at me with one eyebrow raised. I sighed and opened up the phone and dialed the bad one. On the second ring, somebody apparently picked up. Watching Kim lean forward from the couch. This is gonna sound weird.
There are pockets within pockets.
Hissed a voice on the other end. It sounded possibly male, but more like a snake than a human. I went cold. This isn't who you think it is.
This isn't who you think it is.
Repeated the hissing voice. Then I heard a... Call terminated. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Well, Kim said. It's a ghost phone, said Anna. You, I said, glaring at my daughter. Get your ass in your room and get dressed for school. Now. My wife and daughter both looked at me with shocked faces. Now, I said. Anna got up and ran to her room. What the fuck was that about? Kim said. You better have a good reason for talking to Anna like that. She didn't do nothing wrong. Going out about the ghost phone like that? I said quietly now. Ghosts aren't real. What happened on the phone? It sounded like you reached somebody. I laughed a little crazily, because I didn't quite know what else to do. Oh, I got somebody. What did they say? He, or she, or it, said, there are pockets within pockets. And that's about it. This phone must come from the loony bin or something. They let the patients have phones that only the orderlies can contact. It's something like that. That improvised explanation suddenly made a lot of sense to me. That's what this is. I said, feeling a lot more at ease now. Huh, Kim said, growing thoughtful now. That is weird. Well... Your coat, Kim said, jumping from the couch. Your coat, there's a hidden pocket in there. Look, I said, frowning, suddenly realizing without a doubt that she was right. Maybe the whole coat thing was a bad idea. But it was no use. She was already in the coat rack, pawing away at the damn coat. She turned the front pockets inside and out and looked closely at them. There's something in here, she said, pointing at one of the turned out pockets. Something sewn into the pocket. Kim picked up the coat and ran into the kitchen. Wait, I said. Kim stopped running. You don't want to know what it is? She asked, her eyes wide with excitement. That call I made, I said slowly. There was someone called the Bad One. The Bad One. Kim laughed. So? What do you think's gonna happen? We're gonna cut it open and a ghost is gonna fly out? I saw Anna come down the hallway dressed for school. She was looking sullen. And, well, I felt terrible about yelling at her before. I choked down my unease with the whole situation and nodded at Kim. Ghosts aren't real, Mama. Go ahead and cut it open. Papa, Papa, said Anna, her sullenness already forgotten and replaced by a look of wonder. Yeah, kiddo? Did the ghost phone tell you to cut that open? I sighed. Yep, the ghost phone told me to cut it open. A moment later, my wife came out of the kitchen holding up a square folded piece of paper in her hand. What is it? Asked Anna. Let's find out, said Kim, unfolding the paper on the coffee table. I didn't feel so good. As the paper opened up, we saw what was scrawled across it. It was a hand-drawn map. It looked to depict a shoreline, with a few large rocks, in a forest at the edge of the beach. Right in the middle of the forest was... X marks the spot, said Anna. I didn't know much for certain about life. I didn't know if God existed or if there was anything beyond worm food when we died. I didn't know if I voted for the right person in the last election, or if I'd vote for the right one in the next. I didn't know if I'd make it to the next election, or if I would be 6 feet under by then. But I did know one thing. I knew that I didn't want to get within 10 miles of that fucking X on the map, wherever it was. And I knew that I didn't want to find out where it was to begin with. So 2 things in that moment I knew for sure. Cool, Kim said. Let's find it. Yay, said Anna. I had a hard time at work, but luckily it was a slow day. The office phone rang a few times, making me jump every time, with people wanting oil deliveries and a few people came in to pay their bills. I went through the motions like a zombie. I didn't want to, but I kept thinking about that damn map. The location seemed vaguely familiar, and my mind kept searching, seeming to get closer and closer to nailing it down. I had the phone in the same pocket where I'd found it. I kept taking it out to see if I had missed any messages, from the good one. I mean, that's who you want to hear from, right? Not someone called the bad one, directing you to a secret map. No, you want to hear from the good one, telling you what to do next. By lunchtime, I had thought enough about the whole ordeal. I drove down to the thrift store where I'd gotten the coat, and I walked up to the register. "Excuse me," I said to the lady there. "I got this coat here yesterday, and it's a great coat. No complaints about the coat itself. But see, there was some personal items inside of it. Is there any chance you could tell me who brought this coat in? I want to make sure they get their stuff back." "Nope," said the lady. "Nope, that's it, come on." I rubbed my temples and thought, you must have cameras in here, right? Every store does. "Yeah, we got cameras," said the lady, "but they ain't gonna tell you shit. Most folks bring in their shitty old clothes in garbage bags, and most of that shit is garbage. We dump it out all on a table in a big pile, and with the other shit, and sort it out to find shit that ain't too shitty to sell. Even if we could tell you whose shit is whose, we ain't gonna be telling you. Think about it. You want everyone knowing your shit?" "Yeah, well," I said, "I know that if I left my stuff, my shit, inside of my other shit, I'd want someone to find me and give me my shit back." She thought it over. "What kind of shit is it?" she asked. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and set it on the counter. A phone, for starters. She eyed the Motorola. "Ain't nobody want that old shit," she said. "Well, somebody does because it's still in service." "You tried the contactless and shit?" I did. Nobody picked up. The lady sighed. "All right, leave it here. Somebody comes looking for this shit, it's theirs." I hesitated. I have no earthly idea why, but I hesitated. "Are you sure you just can't find out who the coat belonged to and I can track him down?" "Look, mister, I don't really give a shit about any of this. Just leave the phone here, or don't. But I ain't about to comb through God knows how many hours of footage just to find out who this shitty-ass phone belongs to." "What is wrong with you?" I asked myself. "Leave that shit and get the hell out of here." "Alright," I said. "I don't really give a shit either. I'm leaving it with you." "No shit," she said, yawning. She slid the phone across the counter, picked it up and dropped it in a box on the floor. I walked out of the thrift store feeling about 10 pounds lighter, like I had just had a really good shit. I got in my car and my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Kim, asking if I had gotten any calls on the other phone. I was typing out a response telling her I dumped it back at the thrift store, and it was their problem now, when there was a loud bang on the driver's side window. Then I nearly did shit myself. I looked up, my heart in my throat, and it was the lady from the register, banging away at my window, holding up that damn Motorola. She looked different now. Somehow, maybe it was her eyes? They looked glazed over. Against my better judgment, I rolled down the window. "This is a call for you, sir," she said. Her voice sounded different too. She hadn't sounded very interesting and engaging before, sure, but now she sounded totally flat and monotone. Something about her was definitely off. "Nah," I said, smiling. "Remember, that's not my phone. That call can't be for me." "I'm quite certain the call is for you," said the woman. "It is the big one." She held out the phone, reaching through the window. I took it from her and put it up to my ear. "Listen," I said. "Whoever the hell this is, whoever the hell you are, I'm done with it. Got it?"
"I'm afraid that is incorrect,"
said a deep, deep voice on the other end.
"You are in it. Now ask yourself, are you in it to win it?"
"I ain't in shit," I said, winking at the lady, hitting the red button. I handed the phone back to her. "Told you it wasn't for me." She held the phone for a moment. Then her head began to shake rapidly, like someone had jammed a live electric wire directly into her brain. Blood trickled out of her nose and the corner of her mouth. Then, the Motorola started to ring again. "Please? Please?" she said in a choked voice. Now blood gushed out of her mouth. I grabbed the phone with a trembling hand, flipped it open and jabbed the green button with my finger. As soon as I did, she stopped shaking, and the blood geyser pouring out of her mouth tapered off.
Are you in it to win it?
Asked the big one in that low, booming voice. Shit, I said, still staring in shock at the poor bloodied woman. Yes.
Excellent,
said the big one, and just hung up. I didn't go back to work that day. The lady from the thrift store turned out to be fine. She told me that she heard the shitty old phone ringing, and that was the last thing that she remembered, until she found herself covered in blood standing next to my car. I told her that she slipped on some ice and banged her face real good, and that she should probably go get checked out. She didn't even have insurance, so I dug a hundo out of my wallet and handed it over. Not even enough to get a damn aspirin pill in the hospital these days, but it was all I could spare. I got home and flopped in my chair, still wearing the coat. Despite all the trouble it brought me, I was still quite fond of the thing. I thought, well, I'm in it to win it now, but what the hell am I in, and how the hell do I win it? I reached over to the coffee table, where the map was still laying open from this morning. I picked the thing up and looked at it. It seemed so familiar. I knew the place somehow, but I just couldn't quite say where it was. Not yet. I would figure it out though. I didn't want to, but I felt that because I was in it, I didn't have much of a choice, especially not if I wanted to win it. I pulled out the old Motorola, flipped it open and dialed the good one. The big one and the bad one were clearly assholes, and I was pretty sure the small one was as well, given the 3 a.m. wake-up call. But the good one? The name says it all, right? The phone rang, and rang, and rang, and rang. I decided that the good one was probably an asshole too. I searched around the internet on my own phone, trying the names as well as the phone numbers attached to the names. Nothing. And Kim never found out what company made the coat. It was all a big fat terrifying zero. I was completely in the dark. Kim was still at work, so I texted her a quick version, minus the demon possession or whatever the hell that had been, of what happened. I'm in it now, I typed. We're in it together, she responded. That made me feel a little bit better for a minute. Then it made me feel worse. I didn't want her to get hurt. I knew that she would insist on coming with me, with whatever this strange and terrible journey led to. I didn't have much time to ponder the situation before the Motorola rang. I considered ignoring it, then thought back to that poor woman, blood spewing out of her mouth. I looked down. It said it was the small one, and I flipped the phone open. Something was making a scratching noise on the other end. That's all there was. Hello? I tried. More scratching. Listen to me, small one. You tell me what's going on here, or so help me. The line went dead. I sat in silence for half a second before the scratching noise started up again. This time, it was at my door. Demons, I thought. Clawed demons that possess you and make blood spew out of your mouth. I looked around the room in a panic for something, anything I could use to fight off a demon. I ran over to the bookcase and began pulling books out, hoping for a copy of the Bible, even though I was almost certain that we did not have one. God damn it, I said. Then I saw the DVD of Mad Max right there on the shelf. It was an insane, desperate train of thought, every single step of the way, and I knew that. But the thought was, demons, the Bible, Jesus. Mel Gibson made a movie about Jesus. Mel Gibson is in Mad Max. I grabbed the DVD case and ran over and crouched behind my chair, sweat dripping down my face. I did a little impromptu prayer. Dear God, please, bless this DVD and protect me from the demons. I will do anything for you. The scratching continued for a few terrifying minutes. Then it stopped. Then I heard... Well, I heard a meow. Yeah, there it was again. I crawled out, slowly, across the living room, clutching the Mad Max DVD to my chest. I reached the front door and pressed my ear to it, and listened. It was the most pathetic meowing I had ever heard. It definitely sounded like a cat. I stood up and peeked out of the window atop my door. I couldn't see anything out there. Certainly not a crazed clawed demon. I took a deep breath and opened the door a crack. There at the threshold was the fluffiest gray kitten I had ever seen. When it saw me, it stopped meowing and began purring pretty loudly. "Hey there, bud. You get a little lost?" I said, bending down to scratch it under its chin. It looked up at me with these wide eyes. "I hope some asshole didn't just leave you here," I said. It meowed back. "Well, come in. I'll check with the neighbors, see if we can figure out where you belong." I opened up the door all the way and he walked right in, rubbing up against my leg, its fluffy gray tail sticking up like an antenna. I fed it some sliced turkey, which it wolfed right down, then sat down in my chair, scrolling through my contacts for the neighbors. The kitten jumped up on my lap, still purring like crazy. Great, I thought. Just what I need, a fucking cat. The thing dug its little claws into my legs and leapt off of me to the table, just a split second before the Motorola started ringing again. I cursed. I dug the phone out of my pocket and flipped it open. It was the good one. Finally! I answered the call, and on the other end was just ringing. It just rang and rang and rang, just like it had each of the times I tried to call the good one. I hung up in disgust and looked over to see that the cat had pissed all over my coffee table. "Bad kitty," I said. Picking it up, I carried it into the kitchen where I grabbed a roll of paper towels. I spread out every square of the 5 layers on the kitchen floor. "See that?" I said, setting the cat down on the paper towels. "That's where you go if you have to go. Got it?" The little fluff ball looked up at me and started purring again. It followed me, paper towels in hand, back into the living room. I tore off a handful of paper towels to mop up the cat piss. But something stopped me. Just as I was about to mop it up, it looked like a little river, connecting the drawing on the table to the water on the map. Then, right then, I knew exactly where it was. When the girls got home, I didn't even try to put up a fight about the kitten. I'd called all the neighbors within a mile radius. None of them have ever even heard of a fluffy gray kitten. And yeah, the thing was cute as hell. I could admit that. So, we apparently have a cat now. "What should we call him?" asked Kim. "Wolfie!" cried Anna. "Hey there, Wolfie," said Kim, scratching under his chin as he purred away. I let them get acquainted as I went into the kitchen for a beer. I leaned against the counter, drinking and thinking. I had to go to Liberty Lake alone, and I wanted to do it before it got dark, which didn't really leave me much time. I didn't want to go, but I had to, and I hoped that it would be the end of it. All this business with this one and that one, and the terrible phone calls. I took a deep swallow and thought about how there was a good chance that it would also be the end of the whole me business. But I knew these assholes. Whatever they were, they meant business. If I didn't go, that would be the end of me for sure anyway. I went back to the living room and watched my wife and kid play with the kitten. After so many years, I finally arrived at the place that I wanted to be. I wanted to break down crying, to hold on to them tightly. It could be the last time, I thought. But that would be no good. I had to play it cool. "Why don't you girls go out and get some litter for the damn thing?" I said. "I gotta head over to Jim's. His boiler is acting up again." Kim took one look at me and knew that I was just full of shit. She walked over to me, grabbed my arm, and dragged me back into the kitchen. "What are you not telling me?" she demanded. I told her everything. There was no use in lying to her. She could smell it from a mile away. I told her about that call from the big one that was more scary than I had let on in the text. I told her about the lady from the thrift store getting possessed or whatever. I told her about the call from the small one, with the scratching sound, and the fake call from the good one, with the endless ringing. What else? I told her that I knew where the map was pointing to. The northeastern end of Liberty Lake. And you thought you would go running off alone, huh? Said Kim when I was done. Well, you're not going, I said. Who takes care of Anna if we both die? And somebody has to go. That's what my gut is telling me. It's me. Yeah, she agreed. Somebody has to go. And before you told me all of that crazy shit, I thought it would be a fun little map to follow, a little game. But now I know. There's something evil there, calling for us. For me, I said. Calling for me. But you're not going running off out there alone, you idiot. I threw my hands up in frustration, spilling a bit of my beer. Who am I going to take then? Wolfie? Oh, my poor foolish husband. You're lucky you're cute, because you're kind of lacking upstairs, you know? You're going to take the police. Sure, I said, laughing in disbelief. Yeah, they'll definitely believe that a bunch of demons want us to go to a spot in the middle of the woods. They'll definitely come along. They will, said Kim, because you're not going to tell them anything about demons. You're going to get creative. Or I am. You're just going to... What you're going to do is just nod your head and look pretty in your new black coat. An hour and a half later, Anna and Wolfie were at home with the sitter, and Kim and I were sitting in Detective Benson's office. Alright, let me see if I get this straight, Benson said, pausing to sip his coffee. You buy yourself a new coat. Good for you. You get a call in the middle of the night and it's coming from your new coat. There's a phone. The call is from a fella named the Big One. No, Kim said. The first call was from the Small One. Of course, said Benson, taking another sip. You missed the call. The next morning you try the contact list. You ring up a fella named the Bad One. He picks up. Tells you there's a hidden map in your coat. Okay. Later on, a fella named the Big One gives you a ring and tells you that you better go to the spot indicated on the map. Or else. He gives you a description of where you're standing at the moment. You know he's watching you. Later on, the Small One calls a second time now. Is that correct? That's right, said Kim. The guy on the phone tells you that there's a kitten on your front door. So you open the door, and there's a kitten there. Okay, now you got one more call. A fella by the name of the Good One, the only other contact in the phone, tells you that you gotta go to this spot on the map by midnight or else. Or else what? Or else he kills your daughter. Then, a few more minutes after the call ends, someone opens up your front door. And let me just stop right here for a moment. Why aren't you locking the door at this point? The door had been locked, Kim said. But I had just gotten home as the call was ending, and I didn't lock it behind me. We never lock it. I didn't know yet the full story, or I promise you, Detective, the door would have been locked. Ah, Benson said, jotting something down on his notepad. Someone opens the front door and chucks in a squirrel. A squirrel with a bullet hole in the center of its head. Is that correct? That's right, said Kim, looking like she was trying to fight back tears. Then you stuffed the rest of the squirrel into the garbage sink disposal. Is that what I'm hearing? Yes, Kim said, wiping her eyes. I didn't want Anna to see it. Ah, well, that's too bad. Forensic evidence and all that, said Benson, as he lifted his coffee high up and took a long swallow. He then set it down. There was a knock on his office door. Yeah. The door opened and a man stepped in. He looked at Benson, then looked at us, then stood frowning. Sir? He said uncertainly. Benson sighed. Would you folks give us a minute? Come on, honey, said Kim. Let's go stretch our legs. We left Benson's office and headed over to the water cooler. What do you think that's about? I asked, pouring out a hot cup of coffee and handing it to Kim. She took a sip. Maybe they found something, the numbers we gave them. They found something. Or they found nothing, said Kim. When she said that, I got the heebie-jeebies. The door to Benson's office opened again, and the numbers guy walked out and around the corner. Folks, Benson said from the doorway, waving us back in. We went back in and sat down again. It would sure be helpful if you let my man here borrow the phone for a few. Let him work his magic. No, said Kim. The big one insisted that my husband have the phone on him at all times. Benson looked down at his notepad. That's right, he said. He drew one hand over his face and tapped the fingers of his other hand on the desk, just for a few seconds before he started up again. I'll tell you what I can do. I can post a car outside of your house tonight and probably tomorrow night too. But I gotta be frank here. That's about all I can do, without some kind of evidence that somebody means you harm. And even that, well, that's stretching it a little bit. Without evidence, I mean. You don't believe us, said Kim. It's not about whether I believe you or not. As weird and maybe bad as it sounds, it's about what the evidence says, ma'am. Well, you must not believe us, because if you did, then you would understand that my husband has no choice but to go to Liberty Lake tonight, before midnight. Benson frowned. I would strongly advise against that. He doesn't want our daughter to end up like that squirrel, said Kim. But I guess it's all the same to you. Damn, she was good. All I gotta say was, it's nice watching her use her powers on somebody else for a change. Benson sighed and looked down at his fingernails. I get off duty at 9 tonight. Be at the brew pub by 9:30, unwinding. Might be up for a trip to the lake. Gonna be a full moon tonight, and you really can't beat the clear skies out there when it comes to stargazing. Thank you for your time, Detective Benson, said Kim, smiling as she stood up. Just doing my duty, said Benson, returning the smile. Then the smile dropped. But if you're jerking me around here, well, things might not end on such a happy note. I stayed in Anna's room for a long time that night, well after she had gone to sleep. God knows that she was a precious miracle of beauty and wonderment. I stood up and kissed her forehead, and gently left the room. Kim was in the living room, drinking a glass of wine. It doesn't feel right, I said, lying to Detective Benson. These guys, they're not human. I don't know what they are, but they're not human. You'll tell him the truth, said Kim. Once before you get to the lake, before you go tromping off into the woods. He'll have the chance to back out, but you'll already be there. Easier to ask forgiveness than permission. You of all people should know that, honey, since it's what you do on a daily, if not hourly, basis. I smiled. Kim, I said, I just want you to know if I don't make it back. You will make it back. Okay, I'll make it back. But all the same, I want you to know that I love you. You and Anna, more than anything in the world. I don't know where I would be without you. Kim laughed. You'd be living in a cardboard box somewhere. I'm sure of it. But yes, I love you too. Forever. I kissed her on the lips and then stood up to put on my coat. From the pocket, the Motorola began ringing. I pulled it out and flipped it open. It was a call. It was a call from the good one. I answered it. It was just more ringing. It rang and rang and rang. About an hour later, Benson pulled his SUV up to the side of the road by the lake. The park was closed, so it wasn't even plowed. You ready? Asked Benson. Look, I said, looking down at the floor, feeling a lot of different things. All of them bad. I told him the whole story then, the real story. I told him that, as hard as it was to swallow, I felt that we were dealing with something supernatural here. And I wouldn't blame him if he thought all of it was crazy, if he thought I was crazy, or if he wanted to back out for any other reason. He listened in silence, and then when I finished, he spoke. We're almost there, he said in a pitch that was at least an octave lower than his already deep voice. I looked up and over at the driver's seat. Benson's suddenly giant head was now tilted at an angle to avoid being crammed against the ceiling of his SUV. You must find a way, said Detective Benson, or the big one, or whoever the hell was sitting next to me, scrouched over in the driver's seat. I will follow. I took a deep breath to steady myself. I heard that was supposed to help. It didn't. Don't suppose you want to tell me what's happening here, big guy. What's out in those woods? What are you? It is time, the big one said. I decided that it was definitely the big one, with that deep booming voice, and, well, the bigness. No time like the present, I said, opening the SUV door. Incorrect, said the big one. Oh, I said, stepping out onto the road. There was a cold wind blowing now, so I put the hood of my coat up and looked around in the moonlight. There, I said, pointing. We beeline in that direction. We'll make it there. Excellent, said the big one with that deep booming voice right behind me. For such a big guy that I now know stood about 8 feet tall, he was one stealthy son of a bitch. I clicked on my flashlight and shone it right in his face. Just tell me this. Am I gonna die out here? Nothing dies, said the big one. You are stardust and god and rat viscera. Oh, I said, not very reassured. I shone my flashlight into the forest, and I got the heebie-jeebies all over again. The woods were dark, and they looked poised to turn me back into rat viscera. I started walking, my large friends right at the heels of my muck boots. At first, it was pretty fairly easy going, as the outer edge of the forest had been maintained as part of the park. There were a few overgrown branches that I had to duck, while the big one just charged ahead, letting the branches smack against him, and occasionally snap against the force of his body. But it was mostly just little more than a pleasant stroll. Or as pleasant a stroll as you can have, with some kind of supernatural monster right up your ass, and an unknown fate looming right in front of you. Then the woods got thicker, and any semblance of a path disappeared. My foot sunk into the snow, and when I went to lift it up, it got snagged on something, and I fell face first into a tangle of branches. The branches scratched me all to hell as I fell onto the cold ground. Then a pair of hands grabbed me under my arms and lifted me back up. I wiped the snow out of my eyes, and I turned around to face what I thought would be the big one, but it wasn't. It was Kim. You're almost there, my love, she said. It's very important that you do this. And then she was gone. Poof. And I was alone in the dark in the woods. For a terrifying moment, I felt lost and directionless. Just shine your light on the ground and find your tracks, I thought. Get this over with. I picked the flashlight up out of the snow until I could see my footprints. Then I trudged onward, in the direction that they indicated. It was a pretty strange sensation. I was trusting past me to know where I was going, even if present me had no idea. As I went deeper into the forest, I started to hear strange noises. Of course I did. I heard a scratching sound, as if some monster was sharpening its claws on a tree just off to my side. I heard a buzzing sound, as if a nest of 10,000 murderous wasps was just a few inches above my head. Then I heard screaming, off in the distance but growing louder as I moved forward. Just as the noises died out, that one grew louder. I shivered in my coat. Papa, a little voice said behind me. I whipped around and there was Anna, standing in the middle of the dark woods. You have to help them, Papa. You have to help them all. Then poof, she was gone. The screaming intensified. It wasn't just one person, but a lot of them. As I got closer, it was almost like a physical barrier, thicker than the woods themselves, slowing me down, making me ache. I thought about Kim. I thought about Anna. Hell, I even thought about that little gray cat, Wolfie. And I trudged on, inch by painful inch, no longer bothering to move the branches aside or use my flashlight, because I was using my hands to cover my ears. It was no good. The screaming seemed to reach the very center of my brain. I closed my eyes to avoid them having scratched by a patch of branches, and I pushed myself forward. When I opened them again, I was in the middle of some large clearing. The screaming had stopped. It didn't make any sense. I had taken one step through a mess of branches, and now I was in the middle of a clearing? I shone my flashlight around and saw a big red X spray painted into the snow. Just beyond it, a shovel was stuck into the ground. I started digging at the snow, and there beneath it was a plastic sandwich bag with something in it. I bent down to look at it with the flashlight in hand. It was another shitty Motorola. I took the phone out of the bag and flipped it open. I looked at the contacts. There was only one, the chosen one. And the phone inside my jacket started to ring. I took that one out. So I was now holding both phones. One said it was calling the chosen one. The other one said it was getting a call from the good one. "Aren't you going to answer it?" whispered a thin voice right into my ear. I snapped my head around, but no one was there. "Oh, you can't see me," said the voice. "I am much too small." "The small one?" "Sure, if you like." The phones rang and rang and rang. The wheels of my mind spun furiously and inadequately, trying to piece together what was happening. What is this? There is a balance that is far beyond your current capability to understand. Answer the call, and you will understand. What if I don't? "You will," whispered the small one. "It has happened before." "The hell it has," I said. "As you stand here, the balance is broken. To give a trivial example, since we started this conversation, 106 human beings have died. None have been born, though the balance demands 214. It came to me in a flash. "Because the good one isn't here," I said. "You want me to be the good one?" I didn't understand it, but somehow I knew it. "All you have to do is answer the call," said the small one. "To restore the balance," I said. "To restore the balance, yes." "And what happens if I become the good one?" "You couldn't possibly understand. You will become far more powerful than any man, or even many gods such as myself. You will become magnificent. Can you imagine becoming God himself? Of course you can't. But let me show you, give you the briefest glimpse." I can't describe what happens next, except to say that I suddenly saw everything all at once. I saw a proton circling a nucleus. Not that I've even heard those words since high school. Which was really the Earth circling the sun. Which was really this galaxy circling some sort of mega galaxy. Which was really our universe circling another universe. I saw all of history, of which humans were just as small or smaller than a single proton. At the same time, I saw each individual human being clearly. I knew everything about them. I saw an infinite number of futures sitting on a horizon to be shaped by me. It was something like that. "What about my family?" I asked, shaking out of it. "Will I get to go back to them?" "You will see them forever in all of their forms and have control over their destinies." "Will I get to kiss my wife again as a human being? Will I get to read my daughter a dumb book before night-night?" "You will be everywhere," said the small one, "all of the time." "I think you guys fucked up," I said. "You're talking to someone. It took me 2 years to buy a new coat after my old one had fallen apart. I'm not equipped to control the flow of the universe." "It's all there, part of the balance," whispered the small one. "It always has been. You will understand immediately once you answer that call." "Well, I'll tell you what it sounds like to me," I said. "It sounds like bullshit. You can't refuse. You have never refused before." "Watch me," I said, and I threw both ringing phones into the circle of bare ground that I had just cleared. Then I turned and headed back to where I came from. The trudge through the woods was awful. In addition to getting scratched all to hell by the branches, I kept expecting my head to explode, or the devil himself to appear in front of me and tear my throat out. but nothing weird happened. At least, not during the walk. I made it through more or less intact. I emerged from the woods and saw Detective Benson's SUV sitting there. High up behind it, I saw the moon. It was supposed to be a full moon, but it looked like a part of it was missing. And I don't mean around the edges. I mean right in the center. I shuddered and looked away. I shone the flashlight in the window of the SUV. Benson was there, normal-sized, with his eyes closed in the driver's seat. He was breathing. I opened up the door and got in the passenger seat. I reached over and honked the horn. Benson's eyes shot open. "What?" "You dozed off there, buddy," I said. Benson looked at me, lit up by the overhead light that had turned on when I opened the door. What the fuck happened to you?" he said. "Your face. Are you okay?" "It's nothing. I just took a little hike through the woods. Got scratched up by some branches, I guess." And nothing. Some asshole was playing a prank. "Look, Detective, I'm really sorry I wasted your time here. How do you heat your home?" "Huh? Do you have a wood stove, a boiler, or what?" A boiler," said Benson, looking confused. "I'm gonna come by and give you a tune-up. It's what I do. Free of charge." Thanks. Least I can do. Now, can we get out of here?" "Are you sure you're okay?" asked Benson. "Yeah," I said. Yeah, I'm good." I didn't know if that was true or not, but I was definitely ready to go home. On the drive home, I couldn't help but think, had I just doomed the universe? Would the moon disappear from the sky? Would the sky disappear? It hurt my head. When Benson dropped me off at my car, I looked back up at the moon. It was whole again. I figured that meant one of two things. One, they had found someone else to be the good one, or two, the whole thing had been something other than what they told me. Either way, I thought it was over. And sure, I cried a little bit out of relief. And if I'm wrong and all of creation ends up collapsing on itself, well, sorry about that. When I got home, Kim was right there, waiting by the door. As soon as I stepped in, she wrapped me up in a bear hug. "Is it really over?" she asked. "Yeah, I think so," I said. She pulled away and looked me over. "Jesus, honey," she said. "You just got that coat. And now look at it, all torn up." "It's fine," I said. Sure, there were a few holes in it, but they were just superficial. Didn't go through the lining. "We'll get you a new coat tomorrow," said Kim. "And this time, I'm picking it out." Guys, as always, I want to thank all the lovely and amazing patrons who are currently listed on screen right now. Dan R, Neophyte Games, Chaos X, Mr. Swiston, Official Jerboa, JY, Pyromancer, Hayden MH, Ethan A, Daniel H, Maximilian Charles P, Deneen H, and Go Cute Puppy LLC. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.